tous, merci d'avoir bravé les intempéries et les perturbations de transport, que vous veniez en voiture, en train, en avion aussi. Je pense qu'on a tous été concernés, en tout cas ceux qui viennent de loin ce matin. Et on va entrer dans le vif du sujet des grands événements qui mobilisent des foules, qui mobilisent des visiteurs et des délégations, avec l'aspect informatique derrière et continuité d'activité. Et justement, à Lille, d'ici moins de 500 jours maintenant, Lille va
within
accueillir
500
les
days, we are
yeux
going
du
to
monde
welcome,
tournés vers la France et vers Lille, avec des
of
épreuves notamment de
course,
basketball et de
with
handball, ici, pas très
basketball
loin, au
and
stade Palo.
handball
Et
competitions.
pour que ces événements collectifs
And
soient un
for
succès,
these events to be
il conviendra que l'ensemble
successful,
des services
of
essentiels
course, all the essential
ensemble
services should
à faire de
collaborate
cet événement un succès, donc aussi
so
bien le
that
transport, mais
it's
aussi
a
la
successful
billettique, les panneaux
event. So
d'affichage, la
for the
signalétique, pour
ticketing,
orienter
all
les
the
visiteurs et les délégations,
signals to just allow people to
l'éclairage,
have some
l'énergie,
orientation,
l'informatique étant aussi maintenant
lighting,
jugé comme un service
internet.
essentiel. Et pour en parler,
Of
j'ai le
course,
plaisir
this is
d'accueillir sur
also an
scène mon
essential
collègue
service.
Eric Antibi
I have here
Bonjour
my
à tous.
colleague Eric.
et
Good morning.
Antoine Ancel.
And
Bonjour à
Antoine,
tous.
good
Eric, tu peux te
morning.
présenter en 2 mots?
Can you introduce
Merci
yourself,
Raphaël.
please?
Alors, Eric
Yes.
Antibi, je suis directeur
Yes,
technique de Palo Alto
the
Networks
director
pour la France.
SE Palo
En charge
Alto
des équipes
Networks.
d'experts sécurité
I'm in
avant-vente
charge of
et porte-parole
just
sur la partie technologique et roadmap.
pre-sales teams,
Antoine?
of course, and Antoine,
Directeur cybersécurité
I'm
opérationnelle
director
au groupe
cybersecurity
SNCF.
operations for
Je
the
m'amuse à
French
traiter un
railway
certain nombre, enfin,
company.
toutes mes équipes,
I
à
take
traiter un
care
certain nombre d'incidents,
of
d'organiser, de
different
préparer
incidents
effectivement
and to
ces périodes
prepare
tendues
this very
des
tense
grands événements dont on va parler
period of
maintenant.
the big
Merci
events
d'être
which are
présent.
going to
Nous
take
allons voir
place
ensemble pendant
soon.
cette petite demi-heure,
So during this
finalement,
half an
5 scénarios
hour,
de réponse assez
we are
simples à
going
des
to
crises
think
de
about
cyber, je
5
dirais, avec moyen de
scenarios of
Mais d'abord,
possible
pour
cyber
l'introduction,
attacks.
on verra
As
qu'on
an
est, on n'est pas en
introduction,
avance, je veux dire collectivement,
yes,
par rapport à
collectively we
de
are not in
référentiels de
advance
réglementation adaptés
for
à
different
la gestion des
benchmarks
écosystèmes,
and in order
puisque
to
les événements
face
sportifs vont
the
arriver
management
finalement
of
avant les
ecosystems.
dates butoirs de
So
production
the
de ces
sports are going to
référentiels. Je
take
pense qu'on
place
doit tous
before the deadlines.
mettre un coup d'accélérateur
So we
pour
really have
traiter
to
les
speed up
angles morts. Alors, les
things
angles morts qui
to
ont été
take
identifiés ces
care
dernières années par le
of
régulateur européen,
the
là j'affiche
bottlenecks,
sur la droite
and
les points d'attention finalement
here
qui ont fait
are
l'objet
the
d'évolutions
different
réglementaires récentes,
tensions, and these
sont
are
orientés autour de la
different
gestion des incidents, la remontée des
regulations
incidents auprès du
in
ou
order
des
to
régulateurs,
manage
se pose des questions
the
de coordination. C'est la
incidents.
directive NIS2,
So it's the
révision
directive
numéro 2,
NIS2,
qui d'ailleurs augmente le périmètre
and
des
it
entités qui sont
increases
concernées
the
par la directive entre la
scope
version 1 et la
of
version
the
2. Et
different
les entités
entities
potentielles sont plus nombreuses,
involved
les
in this
entités critiques
directive.
importantes,
There
et
are
là c'est une
more
nouveauté
of
dans la
them,
réglementation.
and you have also
C'est finalement
important
le constat
entities.
par
This
le
is new.
régulateur
So
qu'il y a
the
un angle
lawmakers
mort en
say
matière
that
de
there
gestion
is
des
a
fournisseurs. On a
bottleneck
beaucoup parlé de gestion des
for
fournisseurs et
the
sélection des
management
fournisseurs.
of the service
Et
providers.
justement, Antoine, en tant qu'opérateur de services
And
essentiels,
as an
le
operator of
service ne peut pas
essential
répondre tout seul, vous
services,
dépendez d'un
how do you
écosystème autour de vous.
take care
Comment
of
vous
these
intégrez les
blind
experts dans ces
spots?
sujets?
How do you integrate the cyber
Ouais,
in
globalement,
these
globalement
events?
déjà,
So as a whole,
l'ensemble du volet de la réglementation
the whole regulation chapter
c'est un levier.
is a
C'est pas une
leverage.
finalité en soi.
It's not a
On
name
n'est pas
as
dans un cadre de
such.
conformité, on est dans
It's
un
not a
cadre
matter of
de
compliance.
responsabilité.
It's a matter of
Et c'est bien à nous,
accountability.
tout un chacun,
So
de
it's
pouvoir
up to
mettre en
us,
œuvre
to each
l'ensemble
of
des moyens
us,
nécessaires et
to
suffisants
make
pour pouvoir
available
être
all the
cyber-résilients
necessary needs and all the
Les
necessary
grands
tools to be
événements,
cyber
les grands
resilient.
événements
These
dont on parlait
major
tout à l'heure,
events that we
qu'ils
were
soient
talking
Coupe du
about,
Monde, qu'ils
whether
soient
it's the World
la
Cup,
Coupe du Monde, quelle qu'elle soit,
well,
rugby,
rugby, World Cup,
JO,
or
ce sont
World
ce
Olympics,
sont des facteurs
these are elements
multiplicateurs
that
qui
multiply the
vont
possibility of
augmenter
these
la
incidents
charge et
and the load
l'importance
and the
et vont
importance,
largement
and
éprouver
they
notre cyber-résilience.
are going
Et dans tous
to
les cas de figure,
push
il faut
under
être
tension or cyber resilience. We have to be cyber resilient as far as we are concerned and our partners as well. The third focus of the lawmakers is to take care of this activity and to be able to provide services to the businesses and public services, even if there are problems and incidents in their internet system. Not to stop the activity, but what about the selection of the service providers? And even if we have not developed that, what about the Cyber Resilient Act? They are going to impose on all the digital service providers, and it is a soft bill of materials. So what are you going to do with your with the provider's chain? Yes, we have deployed different mechanisms for protection, detection, in order to respond, but we still always depend of a service provider who has to be cyber resilient as well. So it means, well, it depends also on the size of the service provider. So we have to provide some support to these providers. Of course, we do control of compliance ourselves, but we have to be able to control the whole chain, because there are very many service providers, and because most of the attacks are at three levels. So the provider is being attacked, and then it arrives to us. So we have to make sure that these service providers are under control. So 3-level attacks, we talk about supply chain attacks. There are businesses that are very well known, and sometimes they are being, of course, under different threats. And this is also, again, their ecosystem. And we can also see this in the financial system. And also there are problems of blackmails of the different companies. We should enter into concrete matters. Of course, we have also the subcontractors. Each of the actors are accountable in this ecosystem. And I'm sure that very often, not everywhere, and we can do very simple gestures with our internet systems in order to face cyber crisis. 3-level attacks. It's not necessarily that we are the ones who are the target, but they go through us in order to attack a major actor. So these are the different possible scenarios. I have experienced them. I guess that you as well. First of all, it's the do we have to cut everything in your work? Do you have to cut everything? You have to reach a compromise. Yes, in my previous jobs, I have had this problem. So first of all, the general manager has to say what is the impact on the profession and what is the scope of this impact. Can I go on with my own activity and under which conditions? So first question, to define and identify the scope which is impacted, and you can have gray areas. Is it under a threat or not? And we are going to focus on the safe or sound place, but there are also gray areas, and we want activity to start as soon as possible under the best conditions, and to see whether we can trust the system or not, the computer system or not. So we are going to look and see what are the markers, the malwares, whether they are in order to decrease the uncertainty and to shorten this period of uncertainty for the business. And then, as a feedback, we are going to increase the resilience of the business. How the activity can remain acceptable for the authorities or the customers, even if you have a computer attack. So what about the network? How your company can provide this, take care of this simple response for small or big entities that have to face this situation? Yes, you're right. Whether you are a customer with our business or not, we decided to say that we should get prepared. For example, for the Olympic Games or the Rugby World Cup, it's a teamwork. It's an available service which is available, and our partners are being certified. It is called Cortex 9.1. So it's threat response proficiency. So when you're going to work with one of these partners, in case there is an attack, and there is a whole process which is already established, and you have a timeline as an SAV, and in 5 minutes you can have access to experts, less than 30 minutes you can have a Cortex technology which is going to be applied to all the servers and then through the cloud. And the idea is to, as soon as possible, to understand why and how this attack has taken place, and you try to do the response and through the client and the partner. So yes, we have this. It is available whether you use our technology or not. No, technology cannot do everything. Don't forget the people behind the technology. So we bring already a response with our partners to respond. So what about the business, in your own business? Yes, you have to do additional work. You have to work with the dialogue with the different professions so that they become aware that you might isolate a part of the incident for this or that reason. You have to have a dialogue with the different professions in French, not with technical words. They might not understand all your computer-related words. And for the major events, you have to organize, of course, just permanent posts, maybe mostly during the summer. You have to have a permanent service on a continuous basis. You have to have, of course, different posts where people can introduce their complaints. It's a teamwork. Yes, I went through this a few years ago. Are you going to sacrifice one of the trades or occupations? And if you have during the school holidays, you might lose a lot of time. Thank you very much. Other possibilities of the scenarios? I have experienced it. So if you can't have access to your data center, maybe the network is saturated, so you have to get prepared to these very many attacks at the same time, 3-level attacks. So, for example, a few weeks ago, there was an attack against the airport, the Paris airport, or the National Assembly in France. These were not major attacks, but still, how can you go on with your activities? How can you reassure the customers and the lawmakers that we will be able to go on with these major activities, even if there is a problem of having access to these places, and therefore you have to go toward PCR and you have to transfer the workload. Antoine, can you explain maybe? 3 years ago, you have started this project to before the beginning of the COVID crisis. Yes, we took this decision more than 4 years ago to have a solution, a VPN solution in the cloud to simplify our facilities. And yes, so when we had the first house, the first isolation because of the COVID, we had this solution of access. And this, of course, solved different problems. You are one of the first forerunners, of course. And can you tell us what is the solution? So the idea here is that we focus on a use case, and the security services are transported into the cloud. For example, you can have access to SaaS, the proxy part, not. And what is interesting is that we have different projects with this solution, but if there is the network which is compromised, you can use it as the continuity plan. For example, when this happened with the French railway company, SNCF, somebody gave me a definition: maintaining the level of security towards the cloud and nomadism. Yes, yes, you talked about the forerunner. The project was already deployed, so when the access to the data center is not possible, you want to maintain the activity, which is seen as acceptable for the different agents. So if we look at the access to internet and the proxy part and filtering of URL, so we have this possibility, and we want to go on with the activity, so you can put whitelist on this URL list, or even with this cloud solution, use the most recent technologies of advanced technologies for detecting the malwares. So to use machine learning in the cloud, and yes, you can have this continuity. Well, I don't know what about you, but I'm disturbed when people who are specialists in computer science, they say that they want to cut everything. As soon as there is suspicion of an attack, and they want to use whitelists, the users don't like it, but you can still just transport these level of activities or maintain some essential activity. What about you? If there is an over-incident, how can we avoid this over-incident in a situation of crisis? There is no rationale if you want to cut everything. If you want to move to the cloud with the opening of the mobility, and this is for the users, to make sure that our users can have the same way of functioning, the same level of behavior, whether they are at home, at the hotel, in the car. No, they don't have the right to do so. In a train or next to the tracks, you have to be able to harmonize, to simplify, unify the modes of functioning for each of the users. What is the conclusion? So we go with to the business internet. Well, if you want to cut everything, the question is, what is it that I cut? So to put yourself in the situation of compartmentalizing, dividing in a smart way, focusing on the different professions, and to say, okay, I'm going to cut what is impacted, but I leave the rest. If you want to cut everything, this has no sense. So what about the business internet? Yes, to ensure some communication flows, for example, for the public services. So you have developed this concept of business internet. Yes, public cloud is being attacked also. Is it more vulnerable? It's because there are increasingly more workload in the public cloud. This is what we see with our customers across the world. 2022 is this year where most or half of them went to public cloud. So in the field of attack, things change, of course, and the way of doing the attacks. You can see these studies in the report that we published in 2023, and this usual scenario of the attackers against the public cloud. And in this website, what can we see? Before the attacker, we would work on deciding and entering through the IP addresses. Now they don't work on IPs, but identities. They try to compromise a credential, a word pass. This is what happened some 18 years ago, if I remember properly. They wanted... the interpreter apologizes, but this gentleman talks far too fast. It's impossible to translate him. I'm sorry. So, if they use an API key, and one of the possible actions is to create new tenants, new accounts, new producers, and checking these credentials for each of the identity of the clients. This is very difficult because we don't receive all the permissions from the cloud providers. So I come back to what you were saying. The public cloud is not more vulnerable or dangerous. No, you don't have to have this in your mind. But with the speeding up of the use of the cloud, most of the businesses have become multi-clouds. And this is what you can see in this report. By default, if you do not manage the speeding up of the use of this public cloud, what we can see here is the difference in terms of attack surface.
Donc provisionné avec des permissions par défaut sur, alors on a mis AWS, Azure, mais c'est valable pour tout cloud provider. Versus quand c'est effectivement le client ou un outil.
And sometimes it's the client or the customer that allows you to have this open door. And therefore, this shows the fact that if this is not managed or if it's not taken into account from the beginning, you broaden your surface of attack. So what about reconciling things? I was talking about the speeding up of multi-cloud. It means that there are different ways of managing these authorizations and this explosion of risks and the extension of the attack service. It's not easy if you do not think beforehand about the methods that you want to use. So you need tools, of course, in order to see which permission you can have for your different cloud entities. You need services, because technologies is not everything. Then you can recover and scan the different authorizations, and also you need services, that's human beings. You either Unit 42 or the different partners. For example, they say there is a problem or a user who has created other users. They should not have done this. Where does this come from? So you have to receive a proper support, and you use Unit 42 to decrease the workload of the entity that does not have the resources in order to face the increase of activity for receiving the protocols that guarantee the integrity in front of the justice system. And what are the intentions of the attackers? So what about the feedback of Unit 42 during the World Cup in Qatar last year? Unit 42 was embarked in the operational centers of security in Qatar. Well, the attacks were not so expert, but there were a lot of attacks. They wanted to receive money, for example, on and also these. They wanted also to increase some political motivation, and there are very many delegations that come to this place. So these frauds very simple. They would clone the institutional websites. They would attack the sales systems and also the mobile systems just to of course, these are crimes. They would also do sabotage on critical websites. And also, it's a denial of services. And this is rather activism. They want to hide a more serious attack. And this is really political claim and a specific targeting on personal data of political public people. This is what we have seen in Qatar, and we think that this is what is going to happen also in France soon. What about these three-level attacks? Yes, everybody can experience these kind of attacks. It's going to, of course, be an attack against the brand or the image, of course. If I come back to these two possibilities, so the public cloud, and generally speaking, this was explained by Raphael. We have the possibility with the Unit 42 service to have a support, even a proactive support. You don't need to be attacked. And it's a very specific methodology which is going to be followed. The possibility of starting investigations in a few minutes, identifying the causes, and also provide a legal report. You don't have only the technical part, but also the legal part. And in 3 phases, at the end of the day, you have 3 levels of audit of the situation. You have the cortex part, what is the, we would like to analyze the attack surface and how my business is exposed. Then the public cloud, and to be able to have a specific audit, what are the different open authorizations. And then the third possible is to have agents on different servers. So this is the detailed method. You define the scope, you understand the incident, just to contain it, to provide a report. And of course, you're not going to just wait for other attacks. No, you have to improve the safety. So this is the method. Not everybody can have all these tools and these very modern tools, whether you're a customer or not. There are different means that you can use to respond. So Antoine, I would like to finish now. Yes, it's good to have tools and procedures and plans. I'm convinced about this. How can we make sure that these tools are operational? What about you as an operational director? How do you see things? The question is interesting. Yes, it's a major challenge. We have a group of individuals, a group of tools. You have to have a consolidated vision of all the facilities. In real time, you have to be able to know what is the area that has been infected, that you have to put it under confinement, isolated, and it should not go towards other areas. You have a whole set of tools. Yes, the French railway company, the SNCF, has really invested in cybersecurity. It means also a whole group of tools. It means complexity is increasing. It means having resources, whether on an internal level or from your partners. You have to be able to manipulate everything, to have a clear vision of what is it that we can do under this or that situation.
And this becomes very complex. So this is a challenge we wanted to mention, but we might not have the time for that. It will have to be dealt with during another session on the complexity of the different services tools. Thank you, Antoine, for your presentation. And thank you, Eric, too. Now we can have questions from the audience.
Micro question.
Do we have anyone helping out with the microphone? Maybe I see someone over there. We have a question over there. Yes, I see that we have people leaving the room.
Bonjour, est-ce que les entreprises sont certifiées CMMI version 2.0 en anglais?
Are the companies CMMI 2.0 certified? Who knows that? In the room, I would say 5%. So it's a reference from the Department of Defense in the US, which is very interesting. It's used for all the subcontractors, and it's something that does start to appear in France with my clients, because they are working internationally, but it is a framework that is quite heavy and is limited to the defense department and also to certain clients. Is it useful? Well, it depends if you have clients that do have GSE or the services offered to groups, and both are linked because, as you know, there is a security aspect to util. They are complementary. You cannot do security and production on the other side. You have to work hand in hand and to have a shared process. I can't imagine that we would have the possibility to try to confine the SI without working with the production teams and without taking into account the different aspects. This is something that has to be done sharing the load. Another question, maybe? Don't hesitate. Anyway, I think we are over time. How to prepare yourself? Well, planning is good, but not perfect. You need a consolidated and coherent vision of your capabilities. As of today, in your company or public administration, do you have a person in charge of the security that knows all the tools that can be used on the 5 scenarios we've seen? I think it could be a good starting point. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for coming, even we've faced very difficult trip here, and I wish you a very good FIC.